Mindfulness is a way of representing the nature of life. What is fundamentally involved in the system is self-knowledge. You see, without resonance, nothing happens. If for no echo, you can't hear anything.
Hello and welcome to Connected Conversations, and I am so glad that you could join us. And first, a shout out to Evan Dudema, who did the music and is a former student of mine. Proud of his cool stuff. He's getting back into recording music, so check out his SoundCloud if you have a chance. Write him a nice review. Appreciated. And with us tonight is Mary Phan, and I really appreciate you being here. You are a PhD student, and you are looking into mindfulness and psychology, particularly with children, which is what I'm really interested in, because I'm a teacher myself, and we can have some great conversations about that. What else should we know about you?
When I'm not doing research, I love playing video games and watching anime. So we are humans, even though we work a lot. So yeah, those are my side hobbies.
Okay, so anime, what is your favorite anime?
That's a really tough question, but top one is X Hunter.
Okay, I've heard of it. My favorite is my favorite's Dr. Stone.
That's so good.
I'm a science teacher. I mean, how could it not be? You know,
it's awesome. That's really good.
But that's the main one I got. My kids are really into anime, so but they're like you. It switches once in a while. My oldest daughter, she loves Attack on Titan. That's probably her favorite. So, and my youngest has she made a Google Doc where she put all the animes she wants to watch, and there's 100 on there, and so it's kind of funny, and so we can have discussions about that. Video games. You're on Twitch, so you are familiar with Twitch, I'm sure, as a video game person. What games are you playing right now, or were your favorite?
So for a while, Call of Duty was my favorite, but getting into grad school, I don't have time to play as much, but more recently I've played Overwatch. I've also played Destiny, and I'm playing Zelda Breath of the Wild right now. So currently Zelda.
Okay, and I will say, call it all the Call of Duties, or Modern Warfare, or
good question. I really like Black Ops.
Okay. I had a Black Ops team at esports in school a few years ago. Zombies? Natty Science asked.
See, I didn't like zombies as much. I love Team Deathmatch, though. It was just quick, 10 minutes, and let's go. We're done. Zombies is more involved. And if you're a bad teammate, people get really angry at you. So I avoided zombies.
Yep. And my oldest daughter's into Overwatch right now, besides anime. And today even, she had somehow she got out of Discord and she volunteered to do something, and she didn't know what it was, but it was a tournament, but it was a quick one. And so I'm like, are you going to walk the dog? And she's like, Dad, I'm in a tournament. I'm like, of course, I'm a sucker. I'm I coach esports and stuff. And so I'm like, all right, do your tournament. I'm like, I'll walk the dogs, but you can do them tonight while I'm in my chat.
That's awesome. Do you know what character she uses on Overwatch?
She's mainly Mercy. She does support.
Oh, okay. She's healer. There you go. Yeah, we need more of those.
It's the hardest, only in that when people want to troll you and blame someone, they're gonna blame the Mercy, right? In the support, they're like, you're not healing. Come on and heal. Hey, Decaf Jedi, thanks for stopping in. Good to see you. Natty Science, thanks for being here. So I find that it's tough to be on support because you always get hated.
Yeah, I feel that way about DP too because I like playing DP. But I always appreciate the healers and the support team. And people are just like, anyone wants to be a DP. That's easy. I'm just like, no, it's not. So I
Yeah.
stand my ground. These are okay.
I mean, you have to understand that none of it is easy. You know,
Yeah.
because if it was easy, everyone can do it. But it's so in Overwatch, it's so specialized. In a lot of games, it is. It's such you can have such specialized roles. You know, and I used to play Rhine main when I was playing Overwatch, and even now, if I went back to play, I'm like, there's new maps and there's a new meta. You know, so it's like I wouldn't even know where to go on a map to be a good, you know, Rhine anymore. You know, a good tank because positioning is everything. You know, you got to get in the right spot, put the shield at the right time. You know,
Yeah.
or everyone else is like, "What are you doing?" And you're like, "It's just quick play. I don't care." No.
And they're constantly nerfing the characters. So like the character changes so much.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's always a meta. You have to kind of know what's going on. And this is for any game. You know, what weapons are are big and what has changed and what new characters, and so there's new dynamics. Oh, it's so involved. Um, so, and like they always like I don't coach esports. I provide a means for which students to play because you know there's no way I can coach Rainbow Six team. I know nothing about that game. I'm not nothing about it, but I know far less than students do. My students that are playing. So, and good luck to them.
So what games are you usually coaching?
I have done. We did a Call of Duty team a few years ago for a tournament. It was a local tournament. I had a middle school Overwatch Xbox team.
Nice.
And we just got together and they just did mainly pick up games after school because there's not a lot of Xbox 8th grade teams to play against, if you can imagine. Because Overwatch is mainly for competitive is PC. And in this year I have a Rainbow Six PS4 team.
Nice.
So, and they're doing good. They're in the HSCL playoffs. They have their match tomorrow night. So
That's awesome.
Hoping they do well. With their 9th grade team, they're all 9th graders. So if they do it again next year, there's a lot of room for growth. So
Yeah, good luck to them.
So that'll be awesome. And sometimes some of them stop in the chat, but I don't see them tonight. They're too busy practicing, probably. Right. So it's amazing how much everyone I have on here to chat with, there's always so much in common, regardless of what the topic is. And we mainly have you here to talk mindfulness. And I think before we get into that discussion, maybe there's a definition so we can come to a common understanding about what it is and what it isn't. Because I have a concept in my head of what it is, but maybe it's wrong.
Yeah. So simply put, mindfulness is just being in the present moment and having those moment to moment experiences and not thinking about the past and the future. So being present in the moment. That's a very broken down version of that, but that is the important takeaway so that we understand what that means. And what it's not is just breathing. People think mindfulness is, I'm breathing right, I'm doing mindfulness, but it's much more involved than that.
And it's opposed to, I think of other like meditation where you try to clear your mind, right? Where you try to focus on nothing. Whereas is mindfulness more of you're trying to understand why you're thinking what you're thinking? It's more of a metacognitive thing.
That's a good question. So meditation and mindfulness is pretty much the same thing. So people also think with meditation, you're supposed to think about nothing, but that's also not true either. It would be so hard to not think about anything. But when you're meditating or practicing mindfulness, you're trying to just pay attention to your senses. So, what's around you? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you see? Um, and if you have a thought that comes up, it's just acknowledging that it's there and then just letting it go somewhere else. And so, if you were trying to totally block that, it would be so hard to try to meditate, because that's not what meditation is. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. It's more of you're acknowledging what it is that you're perceiving,
Mhm.
right? So you're kind of like, I had this thought, it's there. I'm moving on now.
Yeah, exactly. It's just being aware of the things that are happening currently.
Okay. So that helps clear things up a little bit. Hey, Uncle Bill, thanks for stopping in. Good to have you here. Any questions you have, bring them up, everybody. Because I have a bunch of them, so I'll keep asking. But I know other people have really good questions that we've had in chat before. So when I was in high school in particular, I would meditate every day.
Wow,
But
that's awesome.
I had no guidance. All I had were, of course, we didn't have the internet back in the day. Only the military had it or something.
Mhm.
And so my idea of meditation was, just sitting in a quiet place for a period of time, and I would play some soothing music and breathe, you know.
Mhm.
Um, then I it turned out okay, so I guess it worked. I mean, without any real guidance. And is that something that's? I mean, I guess that's better than nothing, right?
Mhm. Oh, yeah. So, your form of meditation is kind of like the top tier. Like, that's what we want to get at, to be able to just sit there quietly, having something in the background, and just clearing your mind, like we were saying. But there are so many other ways to practice mindfulness too. There's like mindful eating, there's
Mm-hmm.
mindful walking, there's mindful breathing. So, really, just paying attention to your activities that you're doing. I describe this to the middle schoolers that I work with, but we are so distracted as humans. We have
Mm-hmm.
so many distractions. We wake up, brush our teeth, and then 9 to 5 go to work. And then after work, we are just trying to unwind because the day was so stressful. But that's another form of distraction. It's just one thing to the next. Um, so if you're like watching TV and then after you're done, you go to bed, and that is your whole day, and then the cycle repeats. And so some people, if you're not taking the time to reflect on your day, that's a part of mindfulness, then you just keep doing the same things over and over. So mindfulness, the importance of that is you're able to take some time to think about, what went well in my day, what didn't go well in my day, um, and these things, when you do the mindfulness practice that we'll talk about, it helps you, like studies have shown that it helps reduce stress, it reduces anxiety, it reduces depression, it reduces a lot of things. A lot of mental health outcomes have been improved because people are practicing mindfulness.
So I couldn't get over mindful eating. Uh, so is that like ASMR eating kind of thing? I mean, what is mindful eating? I just kind of want to get into that. That sounds
Yeah.
interesting.
So an activity I do with my kids, you can do this like with raisins usually, but it could really be anything. But you have them put the raisin in their mouth and don't have them chew on it right away. So the first step is just like, so what does that feel like on your tongue? And then have them describe like, oh, it feels like kind of hard. There are ridges in it. And you're like, okay. And so, like, you're going through the five senses. So, what can you smell? Is there anything you can smell with the raisin before they're putting it in their mouth? What do you see? They're like holding it. Um, And so the final step is putting it in their mouths. So I went out of order there. And so when they put it in their mouths, they're describing the texture and how they feel. And it's very different from what we are programmed to do. Like we have food, we just put it in our mouths. So mindful eating, again, puts us in the present moment and really look at the details of this thing that you're about to eat. And when you tell them like, okay, it's time to eat the raisin, but don't eat it like super quick, just take your time, chew on it very slowly, super slow, and have them describe, so how does it taste now? How does the shape change in your mouth now? And then when they swallow it, they describe like, what was that like? So that is really taking time to eat the thing that you're about to, but just discovering your five senses with that.
I do the same thing with my favorite ice cream. You know, you like savor it. You're like, oh, I like the way that it comes out of the box. You know, you scoop it out, and then like you put it in the bowl, and you're like, ooh, that looks good. And then you kind of smell. Anyway, so
That's exactly it. That's mindful
yeah.
eating. You can also do like mindful dishwashing, like slowly, like what does this water feel like on my hands? Is it hot? What do I smell? Does it stink in the sink? Like those are things that you can incorporate in your day to day. And that's
Mhm.
why it's appealing to me with mindfulness, because you can do it anywhere. And especially like my research interest is implementing mindfulness-based interventions to underserved youth in public schools. So I love that it's free. Like once you learn how to do it, you can do it anywhere you want. You can do it at home, you can do it at school, you can do it during school when you're having like panic attacks. Like it's
Mhm.
great. And I love that it's accessible to anyone.
Yeah. So, natty science. You eat less if you do mindful eating?
You eat less if you do mindful
No.
eating. I don't think that I mean, if that's what that came across as, no, I don't think so. And I don't know if there's any studies to show that. Um, my takeaway there is that you're pausing with like, normally you just want to eat your food and not think about things. You're probably like watching TV, talking to friends while you're eating, whatever it is. And mindful eating is just paying attention to your five senses while you're eating, if that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, Natty Science, please let me know. But I think you can eat less if you are taking the time and you're slowing down. Biologically, I feel like as a science teacher, you would know this too. The slower you eat, the less you eat, because your brain is registering that you're actually pretty full. But if you're eating too fast, then it doesn't transport to your brain so quickly. So then you're still eating, and then that fullness catches up to you later. So I do think that you can eat less, definitely, if you're taking your time to eat your food. I just went full circle with that one.
You know, and I have to go back to science education, and you're talking about distractions, and one of the things we try to do, you know, especially in middle school is, and in elementary school, is get kids to make observations, and they have to slow down and, you know, describe, you know, the physical properties of, you know, of what you're doing, right? Or you're looking at. So it's like, here's some water, describe it, you know, use your five senses. We talk about that with doing observations, and I kind of agree that sometimes they, you know, they get so inclined in just wanting the right answer, and it's like, well, what's the right answer? I'm like, you tell me what it looks like, you know, what it feels like, what it smells like, you know. And you have different, you know, things that they could use their senses to observe it. And so it sounds like mindfulness actually goes well with science education in that respect.
Yeah, and that's awesome that you pointed out that your kids are just like, what's the answer? And I feel like society has molded us to be like, wanting to be so perfect and get the right answers all the time, get good grades. And the fact that you're like allowing them to get the answers on their own is an awesome way to go about that.
Yeah, well, that's what science is. You got to find out for yourself. You can't believe someone else when they tell you that water is wet. You have to like test it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a, you know, a definite place for for that mindfulness in so many realms of kids' lives. What kind of response have you gotten when you've gone into classrooms with kids? Is there anything in particular you'd like to share from that experience?
Yeah, so I haven't done direct classroom work yet. I've been doing them in individual therapy
Mm-hmm.
sessions. So, depending on what they come in with, if it's depression or PTSD, we do mindfulness exercises. And so, I always start off with doing deep breathing and teaching them how to breathe properly. People don't know this, but mouth breathing is not the correct way to breathe, and most people are breathing improperly, and it like actually affects your mental health and your physical health when you breathe out of your mouth. The proper way, and I'm not going to turn this into a lecture, but like if you breathe through your nose and out through your mouth, like that is the proper way to breathe, but we don't realize that because it's just something we do every day. But keep that in mind. If there's anything you take away from watching this Twitch stream, it's breathing through your nose and out through your mouth.
I will admit, part of my family, not myself, part of my family are mouth breathers. I don't know, maybe some people in chat are mouth breathers, and maybe it's just because they have really small sinus cavities or something. I don't know what it is. Um, so, I mean, I've done martial arts almost my entire life, as people that are here in chat probably know. And, part of the training for martial arts is, your breathing exercises. And one of the first things they teach you is to breathe in through your nose and out, through your mouth.
Mhm.
So that's something I've always thought about. Not always successful because it's hard when you're trying to get a lot of oxygen.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's really hard. I
um,
still mouth breathe sometimes. I catch myself doing it. I'm like, oh no. And especially with the masks that are going on, it's so
mhm.
hard to breathe through your nose. So just being aware when you're doing it and then, catching yourself and just saying like, okay, let me try to breathe through my nose. With practice over time, you'll definitely get used to it.
Mhm. And so, when you're doing this with children, is there resistance, or do they kind of like right away? They're kind of like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to just start with this breathing, and is it like it's not probably immediate, but I mean, is it something they kind of get a hold of and kind of like, oh yeah, this is something I can do?
Yeah. So I haven't had any of my kids say like I don't want to do this. The very important step when you're meeting with kids, especially in therapy, is telling them why you're doing the stuff that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So psychoeducation is such a big piece, and I tie that into like their reason for being there. So if they have depression, I say like mindfulness is really helpful in this way. And then why teaching them deep breathing could help lower their depression. So when they have that understanding, there's buy-in, and that is really important. If you don't have buy-in from your kid, then they're just not going to practice it. And so they can do it in session with you, but you want them to do it at home when you're not there either. And so long term,
Mm-hmm.
if I don't see them anymore, it's a skill that I want them to continue doing. So yeah, I've had my kids just like really be gung ho, just like, okay, I see why I need to do this. And they want to help themselves in the sessions. So, a really big part of like doing cognitive behavioral therapy is assigning homework. So, making sure that they're
Mm-hmm.
also following up on that. And if they didn't do it, asking them, like, what were the barriers? Like, let's try this next time. So, you're really working with them every week to make sure like this is something that they're continuing doing, and if they're like, I don't like doing it, being flexible is really important. And because I mentioned there's so many different mindfulness techniques, like, well, let's try yoga then. Like, if you don't want to just sit there, and some of my kids have ADHD, so I'm just like, yes, like sitting there and just trying to do a guided meditation is much harder. So being more active, let's do some mindful walking. So yeah, they love it. They told me it's helped them so much.
That must be great for you to hear.
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm so proud of them. It makes
it,
me really
and
happy.
I'm sure their parents and their other teachers are very thankful as well, um, because it does help, everybody, including the child. And I like how it's almost immediate, and I've kind of seen this in class because I've done like brain breaks and things like that. If we have longer classes, like an hour and a half block or something, and those kind of breaks mentally kind of help kids recalibrate, their thinking. Um,
Mhm.
and there's also this push for, instead of like sending kids to the principal's office, you send them to the meditation room. And I think there's something to that. What are your thoughts on that? I'm sure you've come across that in your studies.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to understand first why the kid is being sent to the principal's office. But,
Hmm.
if it's acting out or feeling anxious, that could be like why kids act out. It can look so different for any individual kid. Having them sent to a meditation room, I love that idea. That would give you a chance to just like process why you're so angry, or like upset, or just acting out in class. If it's just being distracted in class and your teacher is telling you you should go to a principal's office, like mindfulness actually helps with ADHD symptoms. So I I am all for having kids sent to the mindfulness meditation room. And with the kids that I see, that's why I tell them, like, when they're upset about something, it's so important to just take a deep breath, because that pause really makes a difference. It could stop you from saying something really mean to a friend that you're going to regret later because you're acting on impulse. And so
Hmm.
when you take that deep breath, your brain's like, okay, hold up. Like, I need to just take a second and think about what I'm about to say before I say something that I'm going to regret later. But if you don't give yourself that second, like you're acting more now on just like emotions, and so that can lead to just anger, saying mean things, getting aggressive, whatever that might look like.
Hmm. And I think that as a teacher, recognizing when, to use like a timeout kind of thing, like just go out in the hall and breathe,
Mhm.
versus you need to talk to someone immediately, versus this is something way beyond, this is criminal, kind of behavior. Finding that fine line is something that took years, if not decades, for me to kind of, figure out in the classroom, because it's hard to differentiate with kids, what their needs are. Um,
Mhm.
little side story: before COVID, I had a chair in a cushy chair in the back corner of my room, and I wanted it to be like a meditation kind of chair, like a timeout, relax. But I ended up just calling it the cry corner, because it's where the girls would go to cry.
Aw.
But they do it too. They just come in and be like, "I'm gonna go to the corner." I'm like, "All right, go back there and cry. Let me know if you need me to call someone for you." you
I
know.
love that. That gives your kids like an outlet to just let those emotions go, and sometimes that's all kids need.
Sometimes, I mean, usually, if you're crying, that means you need to talk to someone too. If it's
Mhm.
that bad, whether it's your best friend or a guidance counselor, usually you should talk to somebody, if you're that emotionally distraught, because talking about it helps.
Yeah, definitely.
Why
I
do you?
always tell my kids it's good to cry.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that it's true with middle schoolers, but a lot of them are just resistant on like wanting to cry, or at least with my kids, they're just like, no, I don't want to. I'd rather hold it in. And I try to explain that to them. Like when you hold it in, it's like a balloon. Like eventually it's gonna pop. They're like little by little, it's just getting bigger and bigger. But if you let those emotions go and just talk about it, it's a healthier way of regulating your emotions.
Hmm. Yeah, much healthier way. I think, one of the other problems that I think adults as well as kids have is they don't have a way to regulate. And then they turn to drugs and other,
Mhm.
not good outlets for regulating and self-medicating. Um, and I'm sure mindfulness is something that can replace, the need for that kind of outlet.
Yeah, there are studies to show that that helps with substance abuse. And this is more of an anecdotal example, but I opened up a psychiatrist's office with the psychiatrist I worked with at the time. So we were seeing patients that came in, and one of the patients that came in was the diagnosis was for substance abuse. And she told me that mindfulness helped her stop doing drugs. Like it was her meeting with a mindfulness person, and that journey just totally took her off of that. So that was like way before I got into graduate school, and I was like, that's amazing. I heard about it, didn't know anyone
Hmm.
who actually went through that. And yeah, I am just still blown away at what you can do, which is in your own power to do it, and how it can just help you so much.
Hmm. Yep. And like I like the idea of also like that walking mindfulness. And having done, like I said, martial arts my entire life, I think that's where, like, when you do forms training like kata for karate, or almost every martial art has like these drills and forms that you do, and that practice is, it kind of, it forces your body to think about where it is in space and in time, and it kind of distracts it from everything else. and,
Mm-hmm.
and I and I that's probably kind of like that piece of mindfulness you're speaking of, where you recognize what it is you're doing while you're doing it, and the breathing. So I think qigong is a good example as well, as a very easy type of meditation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to a mindfulness retreat. So, like at that retreat, you just don't talk for the whole 8 hours while you're there. And we did a mindful walking activity, and it's so different than just walking.
Hmm.
And I am still guilty of this to this day, but like a lot of us just listen to music when we're walking from like one place to the other, and that is also a form of distraction. You're not taking in like the moments and using up all the five senses that you can, because you're not listening to nature, whatever the sounds are outside. And so during this exercise, I was just like, wow, I didn't know how great mindful walking could be. I'm like paying attention to how my feet touches the stones on the
Hmm.
floor, and just like my surroundings. At the time I was in Philadelphia, so I'm like hearing birds, hearing cars, like it's just opening up a different part of your brain that wasn't active before.
So when going for a walk, at some point you should turn off Pokemon Go and actually just listen to everything around you.
Definitely. Technology is just, it's so tough because I used to play Pokemon Go all the time, so I get it. But like taking that time to just put that technology in your pocket and like pay attention to your surroundings can really do a lot of benefit.
Mhm. We have a question from Natty Science. What resources do you recommend for trying to start doing mindfulness? It's a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. So the easiest way is to start on YouTube. There's so many videos on like mindfulness exercises that you can start. So other than what I'm about to recommend, YouTube would be a really great place for that. And I always use YouTube to like show my kids mindfulness exercises also, so that they know, like if they're forgetting a technique or want to learn more skills, the internet is such a great place for that. So, and also, I mean, if you, yoga is also an awesome thing that you can do at home. There's like videos on YouTube to do yoga too. But the mindfulness exercises that you can start, that I recommend, is one, starting to do um, expressing gratitude. So every day, just mentioning the three things that you're grateful for. A lot of the times we, go through our day and we don't think about it, and we don't think about the things that did go well in our day. Sometimes it's more easy to think about the things that went wrong. And that's just a normal human thing. And taking the time to reflect daily on what you're thankful for, what went well, is a really good way of just paying attention to what happened in that day. Deep breathing is really good also, that I've also already mentioned, but taking deep breaths is different than like the breathing that we're doing right now. So when you inhale, you want to inhale for 4 to 7 seconds and then hold it and then exhale out of your mouth. And so that is one long, deep breath. So it's not just what we're doing right now, but taking a deep breath. That's what I mean by a deep breath. The other activity that is super quick to do is like the five senses. So, if you're in working from home and you want to take a quick break, it only takes like a minute in your day to just sit there, think of, like, close your eyes. You don't have to, but when you close your eyes, I feel like it's helpful to pay attention to your senses. So what do you smell? What do you hear? What do you see? If your eyes are closed, it's going to be dark. But paying attention to those senses really helps you focus on the present moment. And even if you don't feel like doing the five senses, if you just focus on your breath while you're working, that actually really does a lot too. So those are like mindfulness exercises, resources. YouTube is really good for that. It's free, so that's why I'm recommending that. Other things cost money on Amazon, so I always try to recommend free things because why not?
I like what you're talking about with, if you close your eyes, you can kind of, in a way, amplifies your other senses.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done it before where I will, put my hands over my ears to try to block out sound and then close your eyes and then you can and breathe, because then you can hear yourself breathing kind of, and you can like hear your heart better. And I find that, and then you can like recognize your heartbeat, and I don't know, it kind of internalizes, I think, a little bit more some of your other senses.
Yeah, and you saying that just made me think of something too. Like when you're closing your eyes, the best way to go about like meditating is focusing in this area. That's where we call the third eye. And so when you're meditating and you're just like focusing on that moment, that is opening up a lot of the part of your brains that are closed off. So there's science out there to show that we're only using like really small percentage of our brain. And so meditation and like practicing mindfulness opens up a different part of your brain. And I don't want to get too spiritual, but it really is just connecting to you to like, man, another realm. It's amazing the things that you can do when you like really meditate and focus on the third eye. And I was going to make another point, and that's totally slipping me. So if it comes back, I will let you know.
Yep. Um, and going back to the science, we'll switch gears a little bit. So what is your research specifically going to be focused on that you're doing?
And as you were saying that, I remembered what I was going to say.
Excellent. See?
There's studies to show that it lengthens your telomeres in your brain. So like that's just like another tidbit of just how biologically it just changes your neural pathways. So it's great. So yeah, to answer your question, what's my research focus? So currently my thesis is actually on teaching teachers how to implement mindfulness-based interventions in schools. And the thought behind that is we know that it works. I'm interested in knowing if it's going to reduce teacher and student stress by having the teachers teach it to their kids. I'm also interested in seeing if it's feasible. Like, is this doable if we weren't to come in with a grant and provide you with money? Is this something you can see yourself doing? Is it sustainable? And also, I am curious on looking at the fidelity piece of it. So, fidelity is just knowing whether or not the person can do that the way the manual is telling you that it should be done. And working in real world settings, like with research, we're like, we have this idea, we want to pass this along, it will help, but then that's not realistic of what is needed in real world settings, like in schools, community mental health agencies. So my focus is on seeing if in the long term this is just sustainable so that I can scale this up to other districts in low income areas because it's free. So again, like if this is a coping strategy that's going to help teachers and students, like why not? We know that teachers are getting really burnt out. They have so many things to do. So I'm also careful with not adding this like kind of study as like another thing on a teacher's plate. So because of that, I'm doing workshops before they actually start to do this implementation so that they can understand what mindfulness is and how it really could help them personally before they teach this like new technique to their students.
Mhm. And I think that it's really good um, to do the mindfulness only from my own practice as a teacher. In my district, we're a small city school district, and we've gotten, grants for, social emotional learning, and we have a lot more, money came in to hire more social workers and school psychologists, things like that. And I feel sending kids to these people is good and going to counselors is good, but it's almost like you're treating the symptoms, versus the cause. So like,
Mm,
and so I think mindfulness and meditation is a way for, they can do that themselves. So if they're at home and there is no one there, having those types of strategies, like breathing or counting, and having those, as part of a overall way to have students cope with it or moderate their feelings, might be beneficial.
yeah, I was thinking about what you were saying about like how I was taking it is just like mindfulness is helping them with the coping strategies, but they're still coming in with like mental health problems prior to that. Is that what you
Right.
were saying?
Right. I mean, it's one of those things where it's tough when if you come from a a a rough neighborhood, right, and you have a lot of aces against you, right? If you know what the ace score is, you have a lot of things going against you. Meeting with a counselor once a week at school might not be enough, but there's got to be
Mhm.
some way. I don't know. I like to think that there's a way to teach them to better be metacognitive about why they think what they think. You know,
Yeah. And that's like only addressing kids that are even seeing a counselor.
right?
Some kids probably like don't know that they should, don't think that they should. And so part of my intervention is like one, bringing that awareness that it's normal and it happens. Um, normal
Hmm.
and it happens as in like the anxiety and depression that comes especially with kids in middle school, but then here's a way that is empowering you to help yourself and it's free so you don't have to like have a copay or deal
Hmm.
with any of those extra things that you like is associated with going to outpatient therapy. So especially if I'm working with underserved youth, that's like requiring parents to change their schedules around to drop them off.
Right.
So the school is really appealing to me because like the kids are already there. I'm coming in with these things that they can do to learn and then just to practice and incorporate it in their day to
Hmm.
day.
Yeah, I like the word you used, empowering. I think that's what I was kind of thinking, and you really put that into words, because especially for middle schoolers, you know, they want to feel like, they're becoming adults, right? That they can do it on their own, even though they shouldn't feel that they have to do it on their own. They want to be independent, right? They have that independence streak. And I think empowering them is a good way to go. Like you said right at the beginning of this, you're talking about, they have to buy in, right? You have to say,
Mhm.
this is something good for you that can help you be the person that you want to be a better you.
Yeah. And I grew up in a really rough neighborhood, and I just think back to like wishing if someone came into my classroom to tell me like, hey, like these are the things that are going on, and here's a way to help you deal with the stress that you're dealing with in your neighborhood, you know, hearing gunshots like that, I would be like, wow, first of all, someone cares. That's like a big deal. We
Mm-hmm.
know in like the more low income areas, there's a lot of substitutes, like turnover is just a lot in those areas. So that's already like one factor that are like affecting the
Mm-hmm.
kids, just not feeling that there's an adult, a steady adult in their lives, and that matters. So yeah, I just thinking about scaling this up into those areas is really exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to hear how it goes. So maybe I can help you out. I am in a city school. um,
Yeah.
I, for one, am interested in it and its potential. Um, we're doing a thing right now with positive action, which is basically it's a program where students feel or that they start thinking positive thoughts basically and doing like what you're talking about, like gratitude, recognizing uh, good things in your life and how to, help other people and be grateful and, that. So it's called positive action is what that program's called. And it kind of goes with, I think, mindfulness in a way. So um, we'll see how that goes this year. With COVID, everything is, who knows? But
Yeah. So exciting though. So you're starting it this year, or have you already
they
been
they
doing it?
they have started it. I'm not one of the teachers implementing it. I didn't make the cut. No, no, it's just that the way the scheduling worked, it didn't work for with my courses. And so they started it like we had like, training at the beginning of the school year and they've been working on it ever since. So, and my biggest concern always with these programs is um, the kids that really would benefit aren't in school
Mm-hmm.
often. You know what I mean? They're the ones that aren't coming to school. They're not, logging into classes this year. Uh, they're, the ones that not that the kids that are there won't benefit. There's definitely,
Mm-hmm.
every kid can benefit from it, I think, to some extent. But a lot of those kids that I'm concerned about, and I'm like, oh, yeah, what's going on with this kid? I'm worried. Uh, you know, those are often the kids that miss out on programs at school because they're not there, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that's a really good point to consider. And that just makes me think about like if I'm doing that in like low income areas and a kid's not showing up, I would hope that I can try to work it out where I work with the teacher or myself, reach out
mm-hmm,
to the kid, see like, hey, we're having this program. I know like school really sucks and you don't want to be here, but like, hey, just try this out for a day and see if it works. And I say that because I have this kid that I'm seeing in therapy, and she like did not attend school at all. And I caught
mm-hmm,
her on a day where I was finally like I was trying Monday through Friday. Friday she was finally there. I like built rapport with her and
mm-hmm,
just told her like what we're going to focus on in session. And she told me a couple weeks ago, she was just like, you're the only reason why I come to school. Like I hate school, but I look forward to Thursdays or Fridays and attend these days because I know you'll be there. So like that to me just shows like the kid, you know, if they're not showing up, that means that there's something that is just it says something when they're
right.
not there. So
Mm-hmm,
it's something at home or they just don't feel connected to the school. There's
mm-hmm.
something that we can do to try to help. And so knowing what that is such a great way to have buy-in for those kids that don't show up. But it's definitely challenging because it's a lot of the kids and you're just really spending a lot of time trying to convince them like this might be worth it.
Yep. And other idea, mindful eating with ice cream, right?
Mm,
That'll get kids in,
yeah.
especially younger
There,
kids. You give them food, middle schoolers. It's like regardless of what you do, they'll be happy because they have food. Uh,
yes. Yeah. And another thing I do with kids because like parents are sometimes like they don't want you to just give sugar to their kids, understandably so. So, bringing it back to science, positive reinforcement is really, it works. So
Mm-hmm.
the easiest way with that is praise, like, wow, you did a great job, like, answering the phone and attending the class. But then also, depending on the resources, you can reward them through stickers, do like every certain sessions, if they attend, you can give them a small little toy. But if it's for middle schoolers, giving them extra time to play video games. I do that with my kids. I also play Yu-Gi-Oh! So at the end, if my kid is paying attention and they're focused and they're super engaged, I have like my deck of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I was like, "Are you ready to duel? We'll duel. Like that's something we'll do." And that has like created such great buy-in.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, it, that's amazing. I mean, that really reaches a lot of kids. I mean, it's like, because a lot of that is you have to know how to reach kids. And it's like, okay, this didn't work. This didn't work. Oh, this worked.
Mhm.
The games
Yeah,
in this case worked. Right. Awesome.
a lot of trial and error, especially with this kid, just like very distracted all the time, wants to talk about Fortnite throughout the session. I'm like,
Hmm.
hold on, we gotta do some mindfulness intervention. And so while we're dueling, I have him like doing deep breaths throughout. So it works so well. You just gotta be creative. That's the takeaway.
Hmm. And I think there's something to, I love video games and I'll play Fortnite occasionally myself, but there's something about like a deck of cards that's physical, one, and two, yeah, board games and other tabletop games require a certain level of thought,
Mhm.
especially if you're person to person, right? Which we haven't done in a while for tabletop games. But there's that certain level of you have to read the card, what it does if you're not familiar with it, whether it's Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, whatever, or Magic, and then you have to play it, right? And then you're thinking cause effect. You're thinking, okay, I'm going to play this. This will cause some effect. What will my opponent do? So right, and
Mhm.
and Natty Science mentions D&D. That's another one, right? As far as like
I love
RPGs,
D&D.
where you have to, it requires the kid to think and plan ahead, which is mindfulness in a way. You're slowing down, and all the other distractions are gone, and it's just you and the card and your opponent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Natty Science says D&D mindfulness. So like, as yeah, I play or D&D when I can, but yeah, anyone who plays that knows it's really tough to find like a time where everyone could get together to just bang out 3 hours or however long it takes. But I work with a kid with autism, and so like again, being creative of just like trying to teach these skills. Um, I am trying to work on something where it's like a role playing RPG game where you're just like hitting the skill. That's level one. Once you do this, you've moved on to level two. And then with level two, you're gaining like some kind of currency that you can buy for like the additional role playing. But yeah, really engaging the kids in these sessions is so important. And if you're incorporating that with mindfulness or whatever intervention it is, it will increase buy-in, and that's how they'll keep doing it.
So you've gamified some of your sessions essentially.
Yeah, you have to. It's fun.
That's awesome. I like you more and more as we talk. It's fantastic. Um, yeah, and there's been research done on those types of games and getting the buy-in from the kids. Because I use games a lot in class myself, as well as gamification. Um, D&D is another realm of research. A lot of recent research has gone into D&D and role playing itself and learning and kids and how it affects their ability to focus and be creative. at the same time. So I'm surprised chat isn't like more active right now um, about this topic, since we're back on the games again. Um, uh, but unless they have questions, I have some questions for you. So
Sure.
we are going to play a game tonight. And you're into mindfulness. So I figured I would ask you some questions about mindlessness,
Ooh.
also known as stupid criminals. So I have 3 stories of stupid criminals, and you're going to have to pick the correct ending for each story.
Oh,
And there's going to be 3 questions. You get 2 out of the 3 questions right. Someone in chat will be gifted a sub.
oh,
Okay. So,
that's
okay. So, are you ready?
sure.
Stupid criminals. All right, here we go. So, a Long Island man tried to avoid serving time for stealing a Lexus by doing what? Was it A, dressing up as a woman and pretending to be his mother when detectives came to his home to serve a warrant? Was it B, stealing a BMW and saying that he couldn't have stolen the Lexus? He stole a BMW. Or C, faking his own death only to have his scheme come undone when it was discovered that the death certificate spelled registry wrong.
Those are all great. I'm gonna go with B.
B, the stealing a BMW and saying that he couldn't have stolen that Lexus because he stole a BMW. It was actually
Yeah.
C.
Dang.
He got a fake death certificate and he had his wife give it to his lawyer to show that he had committed suicide. But she had spelled registry incorrectly. Spelling does count, kids.
It does.
Wow. You would think you would get something like that right. But of course, these are stupid criminals. Right. So much wasted effort. You went through, you found the certificate. It was actually from New Jersey that they had done this. And, and they
Is this a true?
Yes, it's a true story.
Man, I am from New Jersey, so shame on my Jersey people.
Well, it's someone from Long Island that actually went and got his death certificate from New Jersey. So,
Got it.
you know that link between New Jersey and Long Island, I guess. Right. Anyways, I put the link in there. So if you want to read the actual article I got it from, to see we didn't actually make it up. It is a true story. All right. Question 2. This time from the great state of Texas. So a Texas man was caught stealing a BMW after doing what? Another car theft story. After borrowing the car from a dealership to then rob a bank to return to the dealership with that money that he stole to pay for it. B, parking the stolen car outside the police station to pay for a previous fine. Or C, he got caught stealing a BMW because he was driving the car to court for a hearing regarding a previous car robbery.
Oh, I want to go with A.
And you would be right. That is
Yay!
a true story. So he went to the dealership and he decided, I can't afford the car. I want to take the car out for a drive, rob the bank, and then take the money to pay for it. Perfect logic. I told this story to my students today, and they're like, wow, that guy's really smart. I'm like, no, he's an idiot. He's not really smart. He got caught. Like, how would that possibly work? All right. Well, you're 1-1. Let me link that story too, since I have these. Oh, this is all for fun. This is good. All right. Question 3. And this story, of course, comes from the wonderful state of Florida. If you want your slug of stupid criminals, usually you look at the Florida, newspapers. So Robert Hobby, 41, and Marcus Reeves, 23, exemplified that they had there were a few strings short of a harpsichord, as I like to say, and they made it easy for the cops to find them and arrest them after a burglary spree by doing what? Did they A, leave shoe, tools, and a wallet with a driver's license in it at the crime scene? Did they B, they stopped into a police station to report the crime that they had just committed, each giving the description of the other person? Or C, Marcus's mother had had enough and duct taped him to the bed after finding stolen merchandise, and then she called the cops to come get her good-for-nothing son.
Oh. I want to go with C because it seems very Florida-like, but yeah, that's my final answer.
It was actually A.
Dang it!
You left a shoe, tools, and a wallet. Now, how do you leave a shoe? Well, that's what I want to know. That makes sense. Why did you take off your shoes? I don't understand. And how do you leave them behind? That is bizarre. Maybe they were robbing convenience stores. It's not like they were, robbing a Foot Locker. How do you just leave a shoe? That makes absolutely no sense. Anyways, I'll put that one in there as well. Good old Florida. State full of stupid criminal state. No one's chatting now because they're all reading these articles. Brian got really good at running with one shoe until he got caught. And then he wasn't good at running anymore. Yeah, how do you run from I don't know. I guess that's why they're criminals or something. I don't know. I don't get it. They should have practiced in mindfulness for sure, though, before going out and committing a crime. They probably would have thought better of it if they had taken a moment to just relax and think before deciding, oh, this is a good idea. No, it's usually not a good idea to commit a crime.
Yeah. That's so funny that you shared that with your kids.
I thought it was hilarious, so I want to share it with them, because I know they think it's funny because, I know they'll have, eighth graders have such a, and ninth graders too, have such a bizarre worldview, at least my students do, but I knew I would get a response like, what, that's a great idea. No. What are you thinking? It's a terrible idea. Funny, but that's why I teach, because it's funny. And I always say, I'm like, it's fine for them to think that because they're kids, they can grow out of it. It's only when adults are still thinking like eighth graders that it's it becomes a problem.
Right. I really enjoyed that. That was fun.
Well, good. Next time we'll play Call of Duty. And then I'm terrible at that game. The one thing I hate about Modern Warfare is it takes half an hour to play because you have to download everything right before you play. It's oh, you got an update. Or it's the one game you can have on your PS4 because it takes up the entire hard drive.
See, I'm an Xbox user, so I don't know, with Call of Duty, Nuketown is just the best level ever if you've played that. It's just so colorful and it's great. And I had this idea when I was it was probably 8 years ago when this game was so huge, but I was just I should create a paintball gun level of Nuketown so that people who play paintballing could just have this level, they'll know what it is. And then it turns out years later someone came up with that idea. I was like, shoot, I should have patented that.
I should have put in the hours and hours of work to make it happen. Yep, I think Natty Science liked your idea.
Yes, I love that. Yes, thank you for your support.
Isn't that the thing where you have a good idea like that and you're if only I had the 1 week to delve into that and make that a reality. But no, I have a class, or I have a job, or
Yeah, and like not having the resources. I'm just like, how am I going to actually do that?
Hmm.
Um, there's just so many ideas I've been having lately, and I'm just like, I should try to patent this. And then I looked it up, and it's like pretty expensive. I was like, dang it.
Hmm. That initial investment sometimes. Um,
Can't do that with a graduate student pay for sure.
for sure. For sure. I will say when I did my first graduate degree, I was kind of happy because I was like, oh, they have like the super emergency health insurance, the stuff that'll cover it if you actually like have some like debilitating like injury or something. I'm
Mhm.
like, I have some kind of coverage because I had no insurance at the time. I was like, oh, at least as a grad student, I have, you know, the extreme health insurance option.
Yeah, see, that's like a different experience for where, so like I had a full-time job and then I got into graduate school, so then the
Hmm.
pay is just so different. And so I had really good health care like at my
Okay.
full-time job, and then like going into graduate school, I'm paying like double that and for like not so good health insurance. So I was like, man,
Yep.
what kind of system is this?
It sucks. That's what it does. So,
Yeah.
so where are you in your degree program right now? Is this just beginning for you? Or
I just completed first year and I have 5 more years to go. It is the PhD route, you just want to make
Mhm.
sure that who graduate are competent in their field. So it takes long. So any kids listening to this, it's definitely worth it to pursue a higher degree. You can make so many changes, like policy wise, to do the things that you're passionate about. And for me, that's all that matters. As long as I'm happy and I know there's
Mhm.
value in what I do, I will work at it.
I also hear a lot about it really makes a difference in the team that you're with in your program. Because I know I've
Hmm.
heard, I'm on PhD chat, that's where I lurk sometimes. And people have nightmare stories about programs that they get into and they really don't have a good fit. and
Hmm.
and then they have to bail, which is extremely stressful because people put so much time and effort into getting into PhD programs. Um,
Yeah.
so finding that good fit is very important.
Yeah. It's really unfortunate that that is a reality. So like my advisors told me like when I was at the interviews to notice like how the other graduate students look. Do they look like they are well rested or do they look really burnt out? Because then that's a really good indicator of like what the advisor might be like. And then asking those direct questions. I know during my interview, I was like, how do you like your mentor? Like, is he cool? And they spoke so highly of him. And so the climate I knew right away was just awesome from the questions that I asked. And yeah, that really mattered to me. I staying 5, 6 years in the program and not liking the people or the PI, that would be really difficult.
Mhm.
So yeah, putting in that upfront work and knowing what questions to ask and what signs to look for is so important. Because you're right, it takes a lot of time and resources to like get into graduate school. You have to study for the GREs, and that is so. Oh, I have so much to say about GREs, but I'm not.
I will say a few things about them. Well, I don't like standardized tests to begin with, but like when I first took I had no clue about the GRE. It was just one of the things for my undergrad. Like they told us like a month before we were supposed to graduate. They're like, "Oh, you have to take the GRE," and I'm like, "All right." I'm like, "Whatever." I'm usually a good test taker, so I'm like, "Okay, whatever, I'll take it." And I scored like a 50 or something on that thing. I did terrible. And so when I was like, "All right," I wasn't going into grad school right away, so I really didn't need it. It wasn't until a few years later, and I was like, "Okay, I want to go to grad school. Let me do the GRE thing," and I studied a little bit and I retook it and I got like 69 or a 70 or something like that. And still not enough for grad school. And I'm like, okay, let me study more and retake it. So it's just a matter of you just retake it till you get the grade you need.
Mhm.
Eventually I got an 85, I think it was the highest. And I was like, okay. And it was
Yeah.
all just me doing puzzle books and logic problems. That's all that was.
Mhm. Yeah, that's like my biggest, well, one of the biggest gripe with the GREs is just like it's not like studying for it doesn't they don't want you to study everything. It's just knowing how to play the GREs and like
Yep.
how to answer the questions, which is so unfair for marginalized groups because it costs money to buy this book and like to take classes. The best way to like navigate the GREs is through private tutoring, and people who don't have money can't do that. Oh, yeah, it's just an unfair, my opinion is that it's an unfair way to just gauge students because they have so much more potential. But if they're limited and they're just getting cut off by just what the GRE score is, like then you're not taking time to even look at their experiences. Like, what?
Right. And the problem is, and Natty Science agrees with us, of course, and is that they don't even look at your application unless you score at a certain level. Like it's just,
Yep.
it's like, don't even bother, it says it on there, don't even bother applying to our master's program unless you score at this level. And it's just kind of like, it shows that you don't value them as a person when they apply. You just value them as a score.
Yeah.
We're on the same page here.
Yeah, Natty Science is good thing. A lot of schools are getting rid of it, and I'm so glad to hear that. I like did average on my GREs. I am so happy my advisor decided to look at my application fully. But while I was taking the GREs, and people at my previous lab are so mad at me for like doing this because it's really dumb in retrospect. But like, so I don't kill animals or bugs. I'm Buddhist, so I like capture them, let them outside. And so I had like a not rat, a mice problem at one of my previous apartments. And so I would capture them and take them out to the park and then let them go that way. I just couldn't do it to kill them. But I captured one the day of my GREs. So instead of just leaving it there, I felt really bad. So I took it with me to New Jersey to take my test. And then the whole time when I was taking my test, I was so worried. I was like, did I put the windows down? Is it breathing? It's so silly. So I just threw the GREs because I was so distracted on this little mouse well-being. And my supervisor at the time was like, that was so dumb. Why? You studied so hard for the GREs and you just threw it away in an instant. I was like, but I got in. So you see, it worked out.
Yep. Another fun grad school story for myself. I was thinking of going into, I was going to every program at this one university, and I ended up going to the education program. And I went to the chemistry department. I'm like, hey, I was like, because I just saw a professor in the lab. I was just walking through the building, and I'm like, hey, this is back when you could just go through buildings. And I was like, hey, what's it like to get into this into the chemistry master's program? And he's like, you speak English? I'm like, yeah. He's like, what's your degree? I'm like, I have a a degree in biology. I took the regular chemistry course. He's like, we'll take you. We need a TA that can speak English. I'm like, that's the only prerequisite? I'm like, I haven't taken chemistry in like 4 years. I'm like, and I was like, okay, I guess I could get in the program. But but I was kind of like, then I'm kind of like, I don't want to do that to those students. But that's another fun graduate program story.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And also like one thing that Natty Science said, like the differences in field. So psychology, we do, as part of research is to peer review the journals and papers that come through. And with in the field of psychology, we do this for free as an act of service. But I was told that like business and econ folks, like we get paid like a nice amount to get this done. And for us, we get like 30 days to turn this around for free. But like the other folks in the other field gets like 6 months to get this done and they get paid. And I'm just like, what? Wow, we are nice people. We need to be more assertive on what we need with our pays. Like, because if we keep saying, yeah, we'll do it because it's an act of service, then they're going to keep taking advantage of that. Right? Yes, they get paid. They get paid. Yes, Natty Science.
yeah, amazing the differences. Like, I don't know.
Mm.
That's why I'm as part of a union, I can make sure I get paid for what I do. Um, but even then, it's like, yeah, right before I came onto this chat, I was giving feedback on some assignments. So, uh, outside of my contractual hours, but
Mm-hmm.
that's teaching for you. Um, um, and I think you mentioned early natty science about like the insurance versus you. I mean, this was, you know, a while ago I got my degree. I'm sure insurance and things like that have changed immensely. I mean, this is before, you know, the Obamacare and stuff came out. So there's been a lot of changes in the US when it comes to healthcare since,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the early 2000s, um, you know, when I was in graduate school. So,
Yeah, I last year it was just really tough starting graduate school during a pandemic and moving across
mhm.
the entire country. And then, like the insurance stuff, I found out last year I have pre-cervical cancer cells. So then I had great insurance. I worked at the University of Pennsylvania. So, like, it was great going to those procedures. Didn't cost me as much. Then coming here, everything is out of network. Like I don't get covered unless I'm getting the services at the school, but the school does not do pre-cervical medical procedures to like remove the cells. So I'm just like stuck in a place where I have to go outside to the hospital to get this done, and then I'm just hit with bills. So I'm just like, this is, gosh, it sucks.
That really sucks.
Yeah. I managed to cognitively reframe the experience. I I like applied for Medicaid, so like or Medicare. It's Medicare. So I have like coverage through that now. But like so the good news with that is like they removed all the cells, so that's great. But
Mhm.
now I don't know if I'm going to be covered when I have to do my next follow-up procedure. So it's a vicious cycle.
It is, and it shouldn't be. And I don't like to
Mm-hmm.
get too political, but I think anyone listening can, you know, watching this can draw their own conclusions um, about this. So, um, whatever it might be, one, we all know that Mary should get the medicine that she needs at a reasonable price. Um, yep, yep, American healthcare. Enough said. Um, you know, it's you know, and I think a lot of that. I don't know. Grad school is weird and depends on the different fields how much you get paid for being a
Mm-hmm.
TA and if you get paid at all. You know, in teaching, you basically pay to work because for like your student teaching, you don't get paid for it. In fact, you have to pay to do it. And essentially, you're working a job, which is always funny because they tell you that you shouldn't work while you're doing
Right?
your student teaching. And it's kind of like, well, how do you pay for the class that you're taking? You know, and so a lot of, you know, people going into teaching end up, you know, of course, working full time and doing their, you know, their student teaching as well. So it's just, it, it's, it's interesting and seemingly unfair often, you know, the differences between fields, you know, within science and all the other, you know, ones as well. I think it's, I don't know what it even is like for like English or um, history or something versus the humanities versus the sciences.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that too. I know, like, generally, if you're going into a PhD program for psychology, like, you do get stipends. How little or how much you get, like, that varies, but at least there is a stipend. But that requires you to do assistantships like TA, doing clinical stuff, doing research on the side. But yeah, I, it's it's tough to manage. Like, how can you do that and not have a side job? The other alternative is just pull loans, and that's what I'm doing. So, you know, whatever. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I remember I had a professor who he was like, oh, you should never have to pay for grad school, you know, for science at least. This is like for biology because, they would essentially hire you to be a TA, or something like that. So I didn't find that to be the case everywhere necessarily. But like I said, there's so much variation in programs and what's available.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then science brings up the government, the federal government, and then you could apply for grants and fellowships and all kinds of other stuff to help supplement your income as well.
Yeah. And even then, I'm learning that it's still not enough. So it's like if you get the grants and that's the focus for like your research, if you're going for a fellowship. And so, yeah, finding that balance, it's just, you got to be creative.
Yep. But like you said, if you're doing what you love and you're with a team of people that you enjoy being with and working with, then it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that is a takeaway. Do what makes you happy, not what makes the most money. I don't know if people would ever agree with that, but it goes a long way.
I think most people arrive at that wisdom at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, in their lives. I'm lucky enough to work with a team at school that I have known for a long time, and we get along, and it's a really good environment, because you need that, especially in where you work as well. There can be a lot of stress. You hear stories, and you're dealing with kids where their lives are terrible, and you need to be able to talk to people yourself, that you can rely on, and know they're going to be there for you.
Yeah, exactly. I had a thought and then, man, it just went away again.
I'll say something and it'll come back to you. It'll be there. So next week, Natty Signs, you're gonna be on the chat, aren't you, Natty? I believe that's the schedule for next week. So that'll be fun, to have him on here. Biochemistry will be that topic. So I haven't done biochemistry. I don't think I've talked to a biochemist yet either. Some of the fringes. We've done a lot of chemistry, organic chemistry, yes, but not biochemistry. So
That's fascinating.
that'll be good. And I wrote down some notes, Mary. So my goal here is expressing gratitude, right? Maybe 3 things a day. I'm not sure how long I'm going to try to go for that, for like a week. I could definitely do it. I'll probably tweet it out, keep myself honest, right? And like at the end of the day, reflect and say something that went well. And deep breathing as well. And the hard part for me, I think, gratitude I can easily do. It's what went well sometimes. I think for me would be hard, because sometimes you just have those days where it just doesn't seem to be going well, and you have trouble. You're like, what went right today? I'm like, okay. I put on my shoes,
Yeah,
I
it's
successfully,
really hard.
I successfully refrained from punching someone in the face. You know what? So sometimes it's hard to come up with like a good, I don't want to just be like a cheese out on the what went well, but find something that's genuine, I guess, for what went well.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult to flex that part of your brain and think about like what went well, when especially if you had like a really bad day. But I like say this to my kids too, of just like the friends that you were able to talk to in the day, or just like knowing that you have a roof over your head and you have a good job for adults, or you still have a job while some people don't. Perspective taking in that way, no matter how little it is also really helpful to just be like, yeah, you know what, I really had a crappy day, but at least I still have a place to live and I'm with like my family and my friends and they still care about me. So that's always a good go-to too when you're like in that loop of just like everything sucks.
Mm-hmm. And Natty Sciences has his yoga going on.
Hmm.
It's on that. That's a good thing. I don't do yoga personally. I have other things I do, uh, you know, in its place. Um, but definitely, if you want to sit with anyone else that's watching and listening, if you have set your own mindfulness goals, um, please stop in and maybe you can tweet at Mary and let her know and thank her for her input and her motivation to get you to be a little more mindful and
Yeah.
show that gratitude.
5 minutes a day, it really just makes a difference. Even if you're like, I'm so busy, I can't imagine like putting that in my schedule, just 5 minutes right before bed, before you start your day, is really important. And then the takeaway is to breathe through your nose and out through your mouth. It really biologically, I've been reading this book. Sorry, I know like our time is almost up soon. But just it really, so quick science background, back in the day, like the Homo sapiens, like their skulls were so different than how ours are shaped today, and they didn't like floss, they didn't brush their teeth, but their teeth were really straight. And compared to like humans today, like we have crooked teeth and like we wear retainers and braces. And this book that I'm reading, it's called Breath by James Nestor. He like talks to different folks that are having different expertise in the areas, but breathing is what helps your teeth stay straight. It's crazy the impact that breathing can have on your body. I know, I see your face. I when I saw the synopsis of this book, it like he was talking about how it straightens your spine when you read correctly or when you're breathing correctly. It helps like change the structure of your face. It improves sleep. It helps with mental health. And I was just like, how? And I'm like still reading it, but like everything he's saying is true and it's backed by science. And the literature is out there to show that it really matters. So if you're interested, I highly recommend picking up that book. It's a game changer.
Yep. And I think that like you said, 5 minutes a day. And it's one of those things where you take those 5 minutes to do the mindfulness will save you time later,
Mhm.
right? It's kind of like sometimes if you have a good workout, right? You want to work out your body so you feel better. That can help you feel better and focus so you can do your work and get other things done as well. I feel mindfulness is the same thing. If you're at peace in your mind, it saves you time later where you instead of like being not being distracted and not being able to being everywhere, it'll help you come to a place where you can be more productive and fulfilling.
Yeah, and just to add to exactly what you're saying, they recommend doing it in the morning to set your goals and intentions for the rest of the day. It's been proven by literature to be like the best time to do it. But yeah, even if you can incorporate it like during your break time, especially if we're on Zoom all the time, it's nice to just take away from the screen and just like do some mindful practices because then you're just glued to this monitor all day. It's tiring and taxing.
Mm-hmm. It can be. um, and the worst part is when you play video games like you or I do, and then you're just like, what I wanted to relax. Oh, I know, I want to go back in front of a screen.
Yep.
No, I think that's where I'll go on walks for sure. And mindful walks. I actually do when I go for my walks. I'll half of it will be Pokemon Go, the other half will be no electronics. I kind of force myself to do that. And if I go on a real hike, then it'll be part of it'll be iNaturalist, and the other part will be without it. Um,
That's awesome.
I feel like my eyes are going to fall out some days. Yep, some days. It does help now that I have more kids in the classroom than remote. And so I can actually, like today, we were doing something where I was like, we're gonna like use markers and crayons. like
Right.
I'm like, we're not gonna be on the computer. We're gonna draw. Um, and so I purposely made it something where I can walk around and look and see what they're doing creatively without a screen. So, um,
That's awesome. Yeah, mindful coloring is a huge thing too, and my kids love it. Just like focusing on coloring. And I'm sure you've seen it, like certain coloring books that are like for adults,
mhm.
where you can just mindlessly but mindfully color at the same time because you're focusing on the present moment. So I love doing that. It's very
Mhm.
relaxing.
And there you go, Natty Science. You can get yourself a coloring book too, and that can help you not be on a screen and also do something else that can relax you and be mindful. So many things for you to try. Yep. That one will
I hope.
cost money though.
Or there are free ones that you can print on the computer too. If you're
Yep.
like Googling mindful coloring, I'm sure there's some like free PDFs out there. Always Google everything first to see if there's something free.
If you have to have some kind of audio.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm my audio it's different. Like there are certain things I can't listen to and be productive because I will sing or my mind will like be completely focused on the music. Like I'll start, humming and dancing to myself and things. Yep. Whereas there's some music where I know it so well that you can play it and I'm just like,
Mm.
and I can just be super focused. I can't do like I can't listen to people talking. Like I can't do podcasts and do work because my brain
Yeah.
is like, I don't know how people listen to podcasts. I can't even in the car. I have trouble focusing on the road and what people are talking about sometimes. Um, oh yeah, a lab printer, free, nice, natty science.
I
Um,
love that.
right,
Finding loopholes.
yeah. And sometimes I just have to. I recognize in myself and my mood, like I'll have no audio at all because I'm like anything that I'm gonna put the phone upstairs and I'm just gonna sit here and like, not be distracted at
Mhm.
all. So,
Yeah, it's like when I work, I like having instrumentals in the background. So
mhm.
having lyrics would really be tough for me to pay attention because then I like start dancing to it. Um, but it's interesting, like a lot of my friends too have a hard time just sitting with silence. And that's something too. Like what is it about needing audio all the time is something to consider. And that's also being aware and being
Mhm.
mindful. Like, why do I need to have something, some background music? Some people go to sleep with TV, like silence, as my friend says, like freaks them out. So that's, is it because you don't want to get lost in your thoughts? Like, what are you suppressing there? Like, it's things to consider.
Hmm. Thinking. And this also got me thinking about not just listening to music, but playing instruments
Mm,
as far as mindfulness. Because there's also been a lot of research as far as, people who, practice, playing instruments, and, their ability to concentrate and, you know, I guess be mindful of what it is they're doing. So,
hmm. Yeah, that's definitely another. Is that a Gibson behind you? Nice.
nope, that's my $100 Amazon special. So,
Yeah, but you're absolutely right with doing instruments. Like, really, you can find anything to be mindful with. I like did Tai Chi, and it's awesome. Like, I can be using like movements, so I'm not bored just sitting there getting lost with my thoughts, but I'm like focusing on my breath and like doing really slow movements. So Tai Chi is great. So if anyone's interested in that, YouTube, the way to go.
yep. I don't do Tai Chi. I do Kung Fu. I do Wushu Taolu, if anyone knows what that is.
Oh, cool.
So, um,
Do you watch any kung fu movies, by the way? Just out of curiosity.
I do. I had like I went through a period in my life, like my early 20s, where I watched pretty much every Jackie Chan and Jet Li movie, as
Yes.
as well as Shaw Brothers. I kind of like went through a stage where I watched, and I'll still watch occasional movies. But I did go through that period.
I highly recommend Ip Man if you
Yep,
haven't seen it.
I've seen it,
Yes, it's great.
and Ip Man too. I've seen it.
Yep,
I'm
I've
not
watched all the Ip Mans.
okay.
It's awesome.
So I did not see past the second one. I don't think so. I'm trying to think what other of those movies I've watched recently. I've not watched the new Mortal Kombat yet. Um,
I haven't either. I'm torn because I played Nintendo 64, like Mortal Kombat, so like I've just been in it. But like I saw the reviews and it's not as good, so I'm like I don't want to be disappointed. So I'd rather just not watch it. I don't know.
just go in with extremely low expectations, and you'll probably like it. I guess that's what I'll usually do. I haven't seen it, but that I remember seeing the original like 90s Mortal Kombat movie, and which the soundtrack was better than the movie probably. But as far as movie adaptations of video games, that was one of the better ones,
Mm.
which isn't saying much, but it was one of the better ones.
Yeah, that reminds me of like I played Dead or Alive, and I don't know if anyone on the chat knows what that is either, but like they made a movie with it and it was so bad. I was like, no. So maybe this is me avoiding Mortal Kombat so I don't relive that trauma. Who knows? I just figured something out during this chat.
Yep. Well, I think a lot of people liked. I didn't see the Sonic movie, but I know a lot of people actually liked that movie. They thought it was okay, but
Haven't watched it.
yeah, I don't have an opinion on it. I didn't play a lot of Sonic. I didn't have a Sega, so
See, I did too. I think it's making me realize I'm not watching the movies because I grew up playing the games and I just want to keep that memory forever.
you don't want to soil that memory with a bad movie. Oof. And they're coming out with is it a Last of Us movie miniseries or TV show? I can't remember what they're doing. What they're doing?
I didn't know.
They're doing some like version of The Last of Us, I believe.
That's so cool.
Which you could do. I mean, it's just a zombie movie. I mean,
Yeah, definitely. I know they're coming out with Spyro this year, but I couldn't get into Spyro because like the camera work just makes me really nauseous. I don't know what it is. With certain games, I just can't play, and Spyro was one of them.
try doing it in VR. You'd
Oh,
probably yak.
oh, I couldn't do it. I played Beat Saber on VR. Very
Okay.
fun. Highly recommend.
That's how my oldest daughter got her gym credits. You have to like keep your log of what you're doing in gym class. She did Beat Saber.
That's awesome.
I'm like,
That's
okay,
so
whatever. That's what you want to do. Yeah, I played some of Skyrim in VR, and I actually want to play it again. But that was like you do it for half an hour, and you're just kind of like,
I can't imagine. I have Skyrim on my Xbox, and I like the way it's on there, but I can't imagine what VR would be like.
I mean, it's wonderful because it's such a great game, but it's just I'm like, how could you ever play through like even I don't know. It's such a huge game to begin with. But how do you even play through part of the plot line in VR? I'm like, that would be epic for sure.
Yeah,
and not
definitely.
a goal I want to set for myself.
Whereas the time is just so, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah. I think the worst part about it with like VR, it's really easy when you're like playing a video game like Skyrim to just have a drink and some snacks like right next to you, or to like just get up and go to the other room and grab some pizza or something. But in VR, it's like, I'm gonna go get a snack. You're like, where? Even if you find it like shoving it in your face, you're like, where's my mouth? You know. It does. It's just doesn't. It's not conducive to that kind of gaming.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So.
I heard they're like, one of my kids suggested that they should make D&D like in a VR, like the maps at least, where you can just play D&D through the VR. I was like, that's genius. And then apparently I found out that like they already have that. So I was like, what? That's so cool.
I wonder. I wonder what that would be like if it's like. I mean, because I could see maybe doing it like doing it in a chat room. So you have your group get together in a chat room and kind of do it together there. But having the map laid out in 3 dimensions, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, haven't operationalized it. I was just like, I love it. I love the idea. Sounds cool.
My thing with that is, as you said, it's hard enough to get your friend group together just to play D&D. Imagine having to get your friend together in VR at the same time. That takes some coordination.
Yeah, and getting all the tech set up, never know. Battery's probably not charged and you can't make it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, this was wonderful, Mary. And it's almost 11 o'clock, which is the time I need to go to bed, really, to wake up and teach 8th grade. And so I want to thank you again for being on Connected Conversations on Science Streams. And I'm so happy for our conversation. Natty Science, I will be seeing you next week. That'll be a wonderful conversation, I am sure. I'm looking forward to that. But Mary, I'm sure we'll be in touch. All right.
Yes.
All right.
Sure.
Think of me when you're doing your planning for research. Maybe I can help you out in New York State, especially with my school even.
That would be great. Yeah.
Because I know I know my kids could use some mindfulness. So, and if I do any in class, I'll let you know. And
yeah, please keep me in the loop. That would be great.
Yep. Because I love it. And I am grateful for you being here. There you go. I already got some of my gratefulness out there.
You got one down. Yeah, thank you for having me. It was definitely really fun being here. I love just talking about mindfulness and science and random video game chats. So this was a really fun experience.
Okay, and thank you so much. And everyone else, thanks for being here. The next stream is Friday night. We'll be playing some more Subnautica. So I don't know if Mary, you play Subnautica, but that's been my Friday night thing. Vinny's been, for one of my students, Vinny's been on with me, helping me out, play some Subnautica and just hang out. So that's what we've been doing. So take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your week. Hump Day's over. Thank you, Dark Mark, for hanging out and modding.
Take care.
Right. Bye.